1 in 5 estate agents in the UK work for a large corporate estate agency. Yet, interestingly, your IT department could be holding back your profitability and your ability to get more listings. James Dearsley, you are a bit of a guru when it comes to PropTech and digital transformation in the estate agency. Why are an awful lot of corporate estate agent IT departments holding back their estate agency? Talk to me.
Dun, 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 dun. Is that the one?
That's the one.
I think we're about to get a lot of hate on this video. I think this is probably one of the most difficult discussions for senior leaders within real estate agents, corporate agents to have. And I don't think, if I can say, it's purely about residential. I mean, we see this problem across commercial, retail, industrial. It's all over the place. And I don't necessarily think there's a right and a wrong, because let's be honest, there are some CTOs and IT directors who are ideally placed to make these changes. But certainly I think, and I'm sure you've probably heard some stories as well. There's been some horror stories about companies going on, a digital transformation journey that it's almost sort of had a massive resistance to that change, and it stops at that.
I've heard of some really good software being presented to the board, but then the board turn around to their IT department saying, shall we do this? But because the IT department are, how can I say, and I'm going on what I've been told, are not sufficient level. I thought, so wow, we're not proficient enough to introduce this. Yeah. They turn around and say no.
Well, I'm not sure if it's their proficiency so much. I think in a lot of situations it is a protectionism problem. Because in a lot of corporates, and I'll give a couple of examples potentially without names, where you've got some of the sort of the larger agencies, and I'll give a residential one here, where I've seen evidence of large agencies who've sort of built proprietary-based software. Because let's be honest, when you're building technology stacks and technology solutions, you've got two options. You've got the build and buy. Actually, you've got a third, invest. So you've got the build, buy, invest. And in a lot of cases, the natural human inclination is to build. Certainly from the early days, when you say, well, actually, what should we do? Let's build a solution because we know we can do it. And again, let's be frank. Estate agency is all about interpersonal relationships and having relationships with your customer. So, in a lot of cases, they'll build a CRM system. What you've then got is you've got the challenge of, these trusted, very, very senior IT people. Who have built systems and understand everything there is to know about them.
It's their baby.
It's their baby, but it's also fit for purpose, generally, because what they do as it's a build solution is they listen, or they should listen to people in-house. And so I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt that they're building a solution that has been required from that particular company. And as a consequence, it's fit for purpose, which is great. And probably in some cases, it can be quicker to build, but that's another entire argument. But you're fit for purpose for that particular moment in time. What happens then is you've got, the industry moves on or your customers change. And actually that sort of bit of building is no longer right. But you've got an IT department who are particularly sort of focused on that. And that's what we built. And it's actually very difficult to change it. We can't add things in, or they build it. And to bring back some of your other discussions, they build it as a sort of a closed build. They don't necessarily build it with open APIs to fix and tap into everything.
I mean, if you don't mind me saying, this almost sounds like other CRMs that are legacy, 20 years old, that haven't evolved on.
Totally, 100%. And that's why those sorts of systems are going to be screwed over the next 10 years, because if they've built themselves as a closed network rather than an open framework, you're not going to be sort of sufficient for the way that the industry is moving, which is much more collaborative and working together. So I think you have a challenge with these IT teams in-house, which have built product. But I think you've also got, so you mentioned proficiency, so there is an element of that as well. But I just think, there is going to be a challenge with these agencies. And I think just to try, as I'm thinking, I'm reflecting on another example, actually from the commercial world. And it was a global company that went in to do some consultancy work for. And actually their problem wasn't about proficiency or expertise or they've built the wrong thing. It was about communication. And it was, the IT department across multiple countries at this point, but it was very much a closed department around communication, and they weren't willing to sort of communicate outside of it. and they just weren't willing to entertain anything from outside coming in. And then as an organization, as a sort of a senior leadership team, the trust was with, in this case, the CTO. And absolutely, decades of relationship at the very top level with the CTO, and really where the weakness of that C-suite was in communicating and testing that relationship and that knowledge. And I think there's two problems there. Number one, there's a knowledge, there's a respect level of that working relationship. And number two, there is also a sort of a language challenge between senior leaders and senior technology leaders speaking different languages.
But isn't it incumbent on the CEO, whose job it is to not run, the amount of CEOs of big estate agents that run their business, when in reality they should be the ones that are floating around trying to, suck up the ideas from different industries, not alone different estate agents from around the country,
100%.
around the world.
100%. But remember that CEOs are not technological necessarily, especially in the estate agency at the minute, which again, you have to question whether the leaders of today are the right leaders for tomorrow, because they have to be much more IT savvy. They have to understand the technological know-how that's going into their businesses, and ultimately will be framing their business for the next 10 to 15 years. And if you can't question your IT director about the technology stack that you've got, you're going to have some fundamental challenges.
Okay, but then surely the job of the CEO is to ask the right questions.
Yeah, totally. But in order to know the right questions, you've got to actually have a bit of a semblance of an understanding of.
But isn't that the job of the CEO to be,
Yes.
And would you say the same criticism could be portrayed at some of the CRMs? I know we touched on that a few minutes ago.
In what way?
I mean, there are certain CRMs that pertain to be 21st century because they have an open API and things like that. Do you think the CRMs are fit for purpose?
I think there are as many challenges with technology suppliers, and our CRMs are one of those, as there are in a state agency. I think it's as simple as that. And a lot of them, especially CRM, because they're legacy-based providers, they have legacy-based challenges. But generally, I think they understand the sector. I think some of the challenges of perhaps more sort of newer platforms coming in at scale, enough people to test with, and generally, in some cases, not all, an understanding of what is needed from the industry.
Thank you for your time today.
That's right.